There is a strange ache you carry. An ache that was not born with you yet clings to your bones as if carved there by ancestral hands. You feel deeply. You respond to stimuli others dismiss with casual indifference. When others are silent, you hear thunderous echoes within. They say, you are too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too intense. But I will tell you something, that those who are asleep in the light of the persona dare not admit what you carry is not solely your own. You are the vessel for something ancient. In families, there exists what I call the unconscious covenant, an agreement formed not by words, but by silence. And within this agreement lies a shadow, not just your shadow, but the collective inherited familial shadow. This is the shadow born of things never spoken aloud, the grief unwept, the rage unexpressed, the desires repressed by generations who believed survival meant silence. You, dear listener, are the carrier of the unintegrated. Perhaps since childhood, you felt things others could not name, a subtle tension at the dinner table, a hovering dread during quiet evenings, a sudden wave of emotion that made no sense to your immediate surroundings. These are not phantoms of your imagination. These are the spirits of repression whispering to you, seeking redemption through your awareness. You might think you are weak, unstable, or overreactive, but I say perhaps you are the psyche's sensitive instrument, fine-tuned not only to your personal suffering, but to that of your lineage. In my work, I saw again and again that the most emotionally volatile among us are often the most unconsciously loyal to their family soul. They become the living altar upon which ancestral secrets burn, not in flames, but in shame, depression, addiction, illness, or alienation. When I spoke of the shadow, I did not speak merely of personal habits or character flaws hidden from the conscious self. I spoke also of the generational residue, the collective suffering buried beneath the surface of family roles and respectability. Every family has its hidden room. You were born with a key, and now you stand trembling before that door, unsure if you should enter. Let me say clearly, to feel too much is not a diagnosis, it is a summons. You have been called to complete a task your ancestors could not. You are what I call the psychic compensation for ancestral denial. The more a family suppresses the truth, whether abuse, poverty, betrayal, or addiction, the more likely one member, often the most emotionally sensitive or artistically inclined, will become the unconscious container of that truth. Their very being will express what has been denied. They will act out what has been repressed, and unless they awaken, they will believe themselves to be broken. I have seen it time and again. A child begins to experience inexplicable dread, rage, or melancholy. The family says, you are too dramatic, too sensitive, too much. But the child is only expressing what the family has for generations refused to confront. They are the bearer of the unspoken shadow. Such souls suffer in ways others cannot comprehend. They walk through life feeling alien, as if they were born speaking a language no one around them understands. They cry for no reason. They dream of darknesses they've never personally encountered. They carry anxieties that feel both ancient and alien. And why? Because their unconscious is crowded with ancestral visitors, emotions and images passed down like old heirlooms, sewn into the very fabric of their psyche. But there is no pathology here, only a profound invitation. If you recognize yourself in these words, then you must also recognize that the work before you is not to become less sensitive. It is not to numb yourself so you can conform to the emotional amnesia of others. It is instead to become conscious of what you carry and then to transform it. You are a psychological priest or priestess. The family, unconscious of what it is doing, has placed its wound within you and said, make something of this. That wound is not a curse. It is an alchemical substance, raw and powerful. And it must not be suppressed, but transmuted in dreams. You may see images of decay, rotting houses, dead animals, leaking roofs. These are not signs of your failure. They are symbols of inherited inner structures collapsing, making space for rebirth. You may see yourself descending into basements or crawling through tunnels. These are not nightmares, they are invitations into the family unconscious, where the shadow dwells and where the treasure is buried beneath the trauma. No transformation is possible without descent. And here lies the danger. If you do not do the work of consciousness, the burden you carry will seek expression through your body, your relationships, or your children. The shadow must find its way out. It will leak through symptoms. It will erupt through panic. It will emerge through strange repetitions, falling in love with the same wound in different bodies, attracting the same betrayals, living out the same cycles your grandparents did. And this is why the shadow must be made conscious. You must be willing to feel what your family refused to feel. You must cry the tears that were swallowed generations ago. You must speak the truths they were too afraid to utter. You must break the rules of silence and become dangerous to the illusion of normality. Because healing is never quiet. It howls, it shatters, it breaks, it remakes. And what does this require of you? The courage to be different, the courage to be exiled, the courage to be called too much. Because in that exile, in that estrangement, you find not madness, but initiation. You're not here to belong. You are here to heal the line. You do not need to know the full history to do this work. You need only to pay attention to what arises in you with a strange intensity, the disproportionate reaction, the sudden grief, the recurring dream, the inexplicable rage. These are clues. The psyche never forgets, even when memory fails. The body remembers, even when records are lost. The soul keeps score. So trust what you feel. Trust what seems excessive. The wound will exaggerate itself until it is seen. The shadow will scream until it is heard. And here, in the presence of the archetypal wound, you are not alone. The archetype of the wounded healer, first embodied in the myth of Chiron, is within you. He who could heal others but not himself. But I say the healing of the self is not the removal of pain, but the meaning-making of it. When you give your suffering symbolic form through art, through ritual, through reflection, you begin to transmute it. You become an agent of the sacred. You become dangerous to unconsciousness. You will be tempted to turn back. You will be told to take medication and move on. You will be offered distractions, diagnoses, and dissociation. But remember this, the soul does not want comfort. It wants truth. And the truth is, your family's unspoken suffering has found a voice in you. It is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And so, the moment you begin to walk this shadowed path, consciously, the archetypes awaken, the seeker, the outsider, the wounded healer, and yes, even the alchemist. These inner figures stir in your psyche, not as hallucinations, but as timeless energies, ancient patterns that have moved through human souls for millennia. They rise not to dominate you, but to guide you if you dare to listen. You see, the ancestral shadow is not only the container of trauma, it is also the repository of forgotten strengths, the very pain that wraps itself around your nervous system like a vine may be guarding a buried vitality, a primal power so untamed that generations before you chose to suppress it rather than face its wildness. In your too muchness, there is not excess, but excess potential. It is not your sensitivity that betrays you, it is your family's fear of what that sensitivity reveals. You are not mentally unstable, you are spiritually alert. The rage that erupts in your gut at injustice, the grief that pours from you at stories not your own, and the dread that visits in quiet hours, these are not dysfunctions. They are initiatory fires, asking you to descend into the emotional underworld where your ancestors' frozen tears lie like relics, waiting to be thawed by your willingness to feel. Many will flee from this path. They will choose to anesthetize rather than awaken, but some, perhaps you will say, yes. And in that yes, the transformation begins. The psyche is a sacred ecosystem. And just as the forest grows wild when left untended, so too does the unconscious teem which grows both beautiful and grotesque. When you turn towards your shadow, not to conquer it, but to understand it, you become a gardener of the inner world. And every emotion that once overwhelmed you becomes a root system, pointing downward into something deeper. Yes, deeper still. You see, we live in a culture that worships the light. But I have always said, and still say now, the light blinds as much as it illuminates. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your twin. And when it arrives with its masks and monsters, it is not here to destroy you. It is here to ask, are you ready to know who you really are? The family shadow arrives like an ancient dream, fragmented, symbolic, disorienting. It may come in the image of an abandoned house or a silent figure staring from the corner of your childhood memories. It may take the form of illnesses. No doctor can explain, or patterns that repeat across generations like a curse. And yet, each of these is an encrypted message from the deep psyche, a myth in miniature waiting to be decoded. Myths, you see, are not merely stories, they are psychic instructions, blueprints of the soul's journey, and your family has its own myth, a hidden one. You, dear listener, are now living that myth out, not because you chose it, but because it chose you. But this is not fate. This is a calling. The moment you recognize that the pain you feel is not madness but meaning, the axis shifts. You cease to be the victim of ancestral repetition and become the interpreter of ancestral dreams. You begin to weave coherence where there was chaos, love where there was avoidance, truth where there was silence. This is not easy. It is holy. Your very being becomes a liminal space, a threshold. In you, the dead speak. Through you, the unspoken begins to find words. You become a bridge between what was suppressed and what longs to be seen. And as painful as that is, it is also sacred. What we do not confront, we repeat. This is why the same betrayal may echo through 3 generations. Why? The same shame coils itself around different necks in different decades. Why a family that never speaks of abandonment somehow breeds a lineage of those who leave or are left. These are not coincidences. These are unconscious contracts fulfilled by those sensitive enough to feel them. You are that sensitive one. And the world, of course, will misunderstand you. It will tell you to get over it, to stop being dramatic, to focus on the positive. But the soul does not thrive on positivity. It thrives on integration. And integration means facing the shadow, not bypassing it. To look into the family shadow is to engage in psychic archaeology. You will uncover bones. Some will be brittle with denial, others sharp with accusation. But among them you may also find the hidden treasure, a legacy of resilience, creativity, and spiritual inheritance, waiting for the first soul brave enough to retrieve it. You are not too much. You are precisely enough to complete this sacred task. And yet, the burden is real. There will be days when you feel the weight of 1,000 uncried tears pressing against your chest. Nights when you dream of drowning, not in water, but in emotion itself. These are not signs to stop. These are threshold dreams, symbols that you are approaching the deeper strata of the soul. Stay there. Do not rush back to the surface. There is gold buried beneath your pain. But like all true gold, it does not glitter. It burns, and in that burning, something else will happen. Slowly, the parts of you that you thought were flaws, your deep empathy, your capacity for sorrow, your urge to isolate, your yearning to create, will be revealed not as flaws but as gifts, archetypal gifts. The traits of the shaman, the artist, the seer. This is why throughout history, the mystics, the poets, the prophets all were accused of being mad because they carried the emotional residue of their time, often before others could even perceive it. And what is this if not divine madness? What is this if not the soul remembering what others have tried to forget? I tell you now, if you have always felt too much, then you are precisely the one who can feel enough to heal, enough to end the cycle, enough to speak what was never said, enough to cry the tears that set your lineage free, enough to light a candle in that long-forgotten room. But beware, this work will cost you not money, not prestige, but illusions. You will lose your illusion of being normal. You will lose the illusion that healing is clean. You will lose the illusion that the past is past. But in return, you will gain something far more precious: wholeness. The path of wholeness is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming who your soul remembers you to be. Beneath the masks, beneath the family roles, beneath the inherited scripts of shame and silence. It is about becoming an ancestor worth remembering. And what does this mean? It means you will have to forgive, perhaps not with words, but with a radical act of no longer carrying forward what wounded you. It means you will have to mourn not just for yourself, but for those who came before and could not. It means you will have to create not from perfection, but from the raw clay of your lineage. You are the dream of your ancestors made flesh. You are their second chance. You are their liberation. And so when you cry, cry fully. Let the tears be for your mother's unlived life, for your grandfather's silent screams, for the generations who walked with bent spines so that you might stand tall. Let your grief become a ritual, an offering to the altar of ancestral return. You are not too much. You are the awakening. They never dare to dream. And yet, in this awakening, you will encounter a sacred loneliness. For those who walk the shadow path must often walk alone, not because they are unloved, but because their footsteps sound strange to the ears of the unawakened. You may find that family no longer feels like family. That language no longer carries the meaning it once did. That home becomes not a place, but a psychological pilgrimage, a returning not to walls, but to essence. This dislocation is not a punishment, it is a preparation. The soul must unroot before it can reroot. And so your sense of identity may dissolve. The roles you played: caretaker, rebel, hold and chilled, scapegoat, these may crumble beneath your feet like worn masks. Do not rush to replace them. Let the ruins settle. For from these ruins rises the self, not the persona you showed the world, not the ego you protected, but the archetypal center of your being. Self is not small. It is not manageable. It is vast, radiant, and terrifying in its totality. It holds your contradictions in sacred union. It is both warrior and weeper, both shadow and star. It is that which cannot be reduced to a role, a label, or a diagnosis. To meet the self is to undergo what I have called individuation, a process not of becoming perfect, but of becoming whole. And wholeness demands nothing less than intimacy with all parts of you: the frightened child, the raging ghost, the silent dreamer, the ancestral mourner. None must be exiled. All must be invited to the table, even the parts you despise, especially those. The family shadow often creates inner divisions. You may feel like the two yous, the one who performs for approval and the one who screams in the night. This split is not madness. It is a wound awaiting reconciliation, and only by bringing both selves into dialogue can you become the container wide enough for your own truth. There is an image that returns to me often: a great black bird nesting in the chest of the sensitive soul. Its wings are heavy with memory. Its beak drips with the old language of forgotten pain. It lives not to destroy, but to deliver. When you listen to its song, when you stop fearing the ache, it begins to soften. It begins to tell you stories, and oh, the stories it will tell stories of your grandmother's forbidden love, stories of a brother who vanished in war and was never named again, stories of loss, of power, of shame, of longing, and sometimes stories of magic, of ecstatic devotion, of joy buried like treasure under the rubble of propriety. This bird is your inheritance. Its song is your map. And so I say, listen, even when it hurts, even when it frightens you, for the psyche speaks in symbols, not sentences. And those symbols will come to you not always in dreams, but in synchronicities, in art, in the faces of strangers who feel oddly familiar. The world will begin to mirror your inner work, because when you integrate the shadow, life becomes mythic again. You may dream of fire, of snakes, of doors. You may feel time folding in on itself, as if the past and future breathe through you in the same moment. This is not regression. This is the spiral path of the soul, revisiting wounds, not to relive them, but to rewrite them. Even memory is not fixed. It is alive, mutable, subject to transformation when touched by awareness. And here lies a secret few dare to admit your story. Your family story can be rewritten, not by falsifying it, but by reclaiming it, by looking into its darkest corners and saying, I see you, I name you, and I will carry you no further in silence. The shadow begins to lose power the moment it is met with compassion, but do not confuse compassion with passivity. To face the family shadow is an act of revolution. It is to say, I will not pass on what was passed down. I will not become the jailer of the same secrets. I will break the chain with my own shaking hands, if I must. And in doing so, you break it for those who come after you. And strangely, even for those who came before, there is a dimension of healing that moves backward as well as forward. When you do the work, they could not. Your ancestors feel it, not in time as we know it, but in the soul's mysterious simultaneity, in this space. The dead rejoice when the living find courage. You may feel them at your back, a hand on the shoulder, a warmth in the air, a tear that is not your own. Just these moments, for they are real. The psyche is not bounded by the body, nor is healing bounded by logic. It is a sacred dance between what has been and what might still become. You are not alone in this, even when you feel like you are wandering the desert of your lineage, parched and disoriented. Know this. Every step you take toward wholeness sends a ripple through the soul field. Every tear you release waters the soil for future joy. Every scream you let rise breaks 1,000-year silence. And so I call you not broken, but brave. I call your trembling a form of worship. I call your too much a sacred offering. The world does not need more people pretending to be fine. It needs initiated souls, those who have faced the shadow and returned with medicine. And your medicine is made not of avoidance, but of honest presence, of sitting with the sorrow without flinching, of holding space for the rage without harm, of speaking the unspeakable and remaining whole. This is the new priesthood, and it wears no robe, claims no pulpit. It bleeds, it weeps, it sings into the void and listens for the echo. It is the soul reclaiming its sovereignty. And what does this mean for you? Practically, In the waking world, it means that when the panic comes, you ask, whose voice is this? When the guilt rises, you wonder, whose shame am I carrying? When the ache returns, you do not numb it, you follow it like a thread into the mystic labyrinth of your own becoming, and there at the center you may find not a monster, but a child, the one who knew, the one who saw, the one who, even in silence, carried the truth. They are waiting for you. They have always been waiting. And when you kneel before that child, not with pity, but with awe, you begin the final, most sacred alchemy. You do not try to fix them. You do not ask them to grow up too quickly, as the world once did. You simply witness. You meet them with the presence they were denied. You hold them in the arms of your adult self, and you say the words no one else dared to say, I believe you. And the moment you say it, something in the underworld of your psyche begins to tremble, not with fear, but with recognition. The dungeon door opens, the exiled emotion steps forward. The cry that has echoed through your bloodline is, for the first time, answered. This is how the wound becomes a wellspring. This is how the family's curse becomes the family's redemption. Not through perfection, not through performance, but through presence. You are not here to heal them. You are here to be the place where healing becomes possible. The moment you stop running from what lives inside you, you become a container wide enough for the uncontainable. The paradox holds, the opposites converge, the sacred tension births a third thing, transcendent insight. And what is that insight? It is the knowing that nothing was ever wrong with you, that your pain was never meaningless, that your emotions were never excessive, they were proportionate to a truth that others were unwilling to carry. You carried it, and now you begin to release it, not by forgetting, but by integrating. The self does not demand that you be flawless. It demands that you be whole, that you claim not only your light but your shadow, that you admit not only your power but your wound, that you see in your pain the portal, and in your longing the map. And yes, this journey is cyclical. You will revisit the same wound in different forms again and again, but each time you descend with more light. You go deeper, not to be consumed, but to illuminate. You become the lantern bearer in your own cave, and others will notice. Not all will understand, but some, those with shadows of their own whispering from behind their smiles, they will see you and say, I thought I was the only one. And thus, a new constellation forms of souls who carry lineage, not as burden, but as pathway. Do you understand now? You are not the problem. You are the process. You are the part of the family soul that chose to awaken, the part that said, this stops with me, the part that dared to feel what generations refused to feel. This is not madness. This is initiation. You are standing at the place where psychology meets mysticism, where emotion meets archetype, where your personal ache becomes transpersonal, meaning, and in this sacred space, the ordinary becomes mythic. Your life is no longer a series of random events. It is a tapestry woven with ancestral threads, dreams, symbols, and sacred intentions. You are the dreamer who dreams backward and forward. You are the fire keeper of your lineage's soul. You are the shadow's last hope for home. And still, I warn you, the path of individuation will not make you popular. It will not win you approval. It may strip you of the very things your ego once clung to. But what it gives you in return is far greater authenticity, integrity, wholeness, inner peace that does not depend on the outer world's understanding. Do you see? You were never meant to fit. You were meant to transform. You were never meant to conform. You were meant to confront. You were never meant to escape the family shadow. You were meant to redeem it. And redemption, as I have always said, is not achieved through denial or escape. It is achieved through the deep, difficult, sacred act of turning toward what we most fear. You will know you are walking the path when your nightmares begin to speak to you in clearer tongues. When your relationships no longer revolve around rescuing or being rescued, when you no longer feel compelled to prove your worth through suffering, that is the sign of integration. That is the sign that you have touched the self, not as a concept, but as a lived reality. And when this happens, something extraordinary will occur. The family shadow, once an oppressive fog, becomes a source of clarity. You no longer carry it blindly. You carry it with conscious love. You speak the names of the forgotten. You honor the stories, even the painful ones, as part of a larger symphony. You weep not only in grief, but in gratitude for having been chosen, for having survived, for having remembered. And yes, others may still call you too much. Let them, because you are more than they know. You are the voice they silenced. You are the ache they ignored. You are the mirror they dare not face. And in facing it, in owning your intensity, your sensitivity, your profound knowing, you become free, not free of pain, but free within it, not free from the past, but free to rewrite it. You become not just an individual, but an initiated soul, walking the earth as a sacred witness to what has been and the holy architect of what is yet to come. You are the dream they buried, now awaken. And so, as you walk forward, I remember this. The family shadow is not a burden to be discarded, nor a secret to be hidden away in shame. It is a gift wrapped in darkness, a seed of transformation planted deep within your being by those who came before you. It is your inheritance, both heavy and holy. To carry the shadow consciously is to take up a sacred task, to become the alchemist of the soul, transmuting ancestral pain into wisdom, confusion into clarity, fragmentation into unity. You are called not to forget the past, but to redeem it through presence, through courage, through love. You may find that the external world resists this process. People will urge you to conform, to quiet your feelings, to just be normal. But the psyche demands authenticity. The soul cries out for wholeness. And you're brave enough to listen, become the living proof that healing is possible in your dreams. Symbols will arise more vividly. You may see the river that flows through your family line, sometimes raging. Sometimes still, you may see a tree uprooted by storms, its roots tangled but alive. You may see fire consuming the old forest to make way for new growth. These images are not random. They are the language of your deeper self, speaking the truth. Your conscious mind has not yet grasped. Do not shy away from them. Embrace them as the sacred grammar of your soul's journey. There will be moments of despair when the weight of ancestral sorrow seems unbearable, when you wonder if you are alone in this vast labyrinth, when the shadows feel like ghosts that will never leave you. But these moments, too, are part of the rite of passage. They are the night before dawn. They are the silence before the song. You are not alone. Remember, the family shadow is not just about pain. It is about connection across time, across generations, across the seen and unseen. When you work with it consciously, you open the channel not only for your own healing, but for the healing of your entire lineage. You become a psychic midwife, assisting the birth of new light from ancient darkness. And in doing so, you transform not only your life, but the lives yet to come. So carry your too muchness with pride. Carry it as the banner of those who dare to feel deeply, who dared to confront the unspoken, who dared to become whole. This is a path of the initiated. This is a path of the wounded healer. This is your sacred inheritance. Walk it with courage. Walk it with love. Walk it with the fierce, unyielding presence of one who knows that the shadow is not the end, but the gateway. And from that gateway, step into your true self.